Hi everyone, Darren here. So I wanted to dig into the 7 patterns of AI. Series of videos, won't do them all at once because that's just too much of me talking, just a few minutes for each. Thinking about each of the 7 patterns and how they can relate to education. I thought this might be quite useful as part of our broader discussion around AI literacy, how important it is that we're all kind of getting up to speed about AI. It's not just about prompt engineering, it's also about how we learn about how this stuff works, some of the background. So I thought maybe these 7 patterns might be a good place to start. So what are the 7 patterns? So they are hyper-personalisation, recognition, conversation and human interaction, predictive analytics and decisions, goal-driven systems, autonomous systems, and patterns and anomalies. I think that's the 7. So what we'll do then, let's focus our this first video on hyper-personalisation. So we kind of, this is probably one of the most obvious ones. It's the one that we've had around for more than 10 years, 12 or 13 years now with Netflix, and even before that with Amazon. It's the AI's ability to learn from our interactions with the system and provide us with recommendations and provide us with a really personalized service in response to what it learns. So the really obvious one is the Netflix playlist, the Spotify playlist, Amazon recommendations, even Starbucks use it for some of their customer analytics and customer prediction models. So what we're seeing more and more is AI's ability to get all of the data from us and intelligently process it and then make predictions about what it thinks we will want to experience based on what we've done in the past. And there's an obvious use case in education. We're already seeing it in some education platforms. If the more an AI can learn about our learning interactions, the more it's able to then predict what happens next. So the hyper-personalization is about moment by moment flexing and moment by moment change of the learning process and the learning delivery based on what it's learning about our interactions. So Khan Academy's a good example. There are a number of other platforms that are already using hyper-personalization to really craft very individualized learning journey. This has got to be a good thing, you know. We've never really had good differentiation in schools and education. We've had sometimes teachers who can do it quite well, but generally I would say that most of the time it's a bit of a one size fits all, which often means one size fits none system, where students are kind of given a worksheet or a handbook or whatever, a textbook, and they kind of just have to learn, same as everybody else. There's no flexing, there's no kind of adaptation. Hyper-personalization through AI seeks to address that by constantly giving us what we need, keeping us in the Vygotsky zone of proximal development, if you like. So we're always in that sweet spot of learning. And when it's neither too easy or too hard, that sort of Goldilocks zone that we want our students to be in. One or two potential concerns, I suppose, with it is that sometimes actually I think it's quite good to give students work which pushes them beyond their zone of proximal development, where they're initially like, oh my goodness me, this is really, really hard. Not so hard that they think, well, what's the point? But I actually sometimes think pushing at the top end of that zone, maybe even tipping over, can be quite good if they're given something and they think, wow, this is tough. I used to teach GCSE and I would say, you know, I'm going to give you some A-level stuff to do, and they would initially be like, oh my goodness, and then they would quite enjoy the challenge. So my only worry maybe with hyper-personalization is that it becomes so bespoke that we're never really pushing kids beyond what they could do. Again, it's very early days, but let's just be mindful of the fact that sometimes throwing some spanners into the works can be a good thing. The second, and I suppose most obvious one, is around data protection, data privacy, data collection. Obviously, the more bespoke the learning experience means the more data that's being collected on us and on our students. So we need to be thinking about the regulations around data protection so that we make sure that the more information, the more data is not being used to train the models, it's kept in a walled garden. We think that's really, really important. So that's a hyper-personalization in a nutshell. We're going to see more and more of it. It's just going to become ubiquitous in education. But I think if we can understand the background of how it works, we might be a little bit more cautious about jumping in feet first when we're using it.